He is someone who just recently joined our club, so very excited to hear his icebreaker today. His introduction is that Doug Crocker will be introducing himself to the club with a short synopsis of his life, interests, and renewed enthusiasm for Toastmasters. Everyone, please give a big round of applause for Doug.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters. I am 68, and with being that age, I could probably fill this whole afternoon and morning with thoughts about myself, but I will limit it to just a few things. My life in a nutshell, some words about my patriotism, and some words about Toastmasters. My life in a nutshell, I'm originally from Oregon, but have lived most of my life in Southern California, in Orange County particularly. And I dropped out of high school in my senior year and got married at 18, totally unprepared and not ready for marriage and raising a family. And even so, I have 3 daughters, lovely daughters, and 11 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. So that worked out well. In those early days of my marriage, I thought, consistent with being unprepared, I thought I wanted to be a musician. And my father, who had been a singer, promptly turned me around from that goal, from that as a career. I spent then about a little over a decade working in a machine shop, which I hated, and taking classes at night to finish high school, and eventually taking classes to start on a degree. And during that, during the college, junior college classes, I discovered computers and the computer field and went all in. I loved programming and finished my degree and went on to get hired by McDonnell Douglas and eventually got hired by IBM supporting McDonnell Douglas and later Boeing, which took over McDonnell Douglas. And then worked for IBM, continued to work for IBM for a little while away from the aerospace complex, and then got hired by Boeing directly and worked out my working life there at Boeing. I am now retired, or I remarried 5 years ago, and very happily so. And I retired, as I said. My wife and I both retired a little over 2 years ago. And during this retirement, besides dealing with the pandemic, we ran an open mic for about 2 years where I got a chance to sing. We both got a chance to sing and meet and work with a lot of musicians, local musicians. Very exciting. Sorry to see that end, but it ended with the lockdowns here. My interest in government and my patriotism. I have generally been intrigued and interested in government and social systems all my life, it seems. And I've been generally, for most of my life, patriotic and had a very strong love and respect for my country. That was started for sure by my father's fighting in World War II in the South Pacific. And I have a vivid memory of a dynamic 8th grade history teacher who made a very strong impression on me. Something to be said for strong speaking skills. And then the grand opening of Buena Park's Independence Hall. I was 15 years old when that opened, and I attended that. For some reason, I attended the grand opening and picked up a replica of the Declaration of Independence, went home, and I was just so enamored by that and proceeded to memorize most, or probably half, at least the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, and internalized it. And I've had that in my heart all my life since then. So that fed my patriotism and respect for America. The interest was also fed by the Watergate drama, the 2000 election drama, and of course the 9/11 trauma. And then the war in Iraq disillusioned me and had me disappointed in America. I had some mixed feelings about that. I voted for Obama because I thought that it would heal racial tensions, racial wounds. I voted for Hillary Clinton because I hated Trump's personality and I was afraid of him. And I wanted to see what it was like to have a woman president. That election night, when Trump was elected, it felt like I was punched in the stomach. I was so upset. But later, when he gave his victory speech, I liked it. He spoke of realizing our potential, and there was something peaceful about that message. And I gave him a chance. My patriotism was reawakened when my wife is Vietnamese, and listening to her story of living first under freedom and then under communism when the North Vietnamese took over, and then her harrowing escape from Vietnam by sea, and her realization of freedom in the United States made me very proud of our country and very fearful of communism. And then our very own dangerous inclination over the last few years towards socialism, very real, very dangerous, had me fearing for myself and my wife that she might experience those things again in her life. Toastmasters. I started a dialogue, what was called Dialogue Masters Toastmasters Club in 2009 for the purpose of bringing dialogue, trying to set up a dialogue format within a Toastmasters structure. And it later became Stanton's Speech and Debate, because debate seemed to be more interesting to people than dialogue. It worked pretty well for about 6 years and finally disbanded. And the disbanding is a subject for another time, another speech. But it worked pretty well. And we had some successes. But it did, like I said, ultimately disband. But now today, I am back in Toastmasters today because of all that has happened in the last several years, particularly last year, this election. I believe that our personal freedoms are at risk. We all knew that this election cycle would be contentious and problematic and divisive. But who would have believed that we would be hearing from mainstream media open talk of deprogramming and re-education of millions of Americans? It's unbelievable that we would be hearing that. I believe that freedom of speech is at risk. And we have no choice but to defend it by practicing it, by exercising freedom of speech, by exercising our speech. And I believe that Toastmasters is, with their desire and skill for communication, are uniquely suited and to be called upon to help bring America together and help America reason through its differences and defend our very right to speak freely. I believe this very strongly, and that's the reason that I'm back in Toastmasters, to try to promote that message and develop my own ability as as a speaker, which is very rusty at this point. And I'm very, very glad to be back, and very happy to be in this club in particular. It seems very warm, and I feel very welcome. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.